Well, this week was pretty much all normal, and it was all pretty close. Can't wait to see what next week's going to have. Alright, so this week was pretty big, to be honest, for week 3. We're moving on to week 4. We're in week 3 right now. And so this is the preview for between week 3 and week 4. First big news is that the Superman beat UNC, and we're going to get the little thing up here, please. So the big news came out. First off, the Supermen beat UNC in a huge matchup. That was a fairly close game. My prediction was the Supermen would win that game. They did, in fact, win that game. It was a back and forth game all the time. Supermen were able to end the game with a much higher rating, and were able to win in that game by 8. Pirates, unfortunately, lose in a big game. They lost without Samuel. Samuel will be back starting this week. They wanted to make sure he did not get more injured, so they were to make sure, just make sure that he doesn't get injured. But they said he didn't play all that week, although he was there at the game. The Dolphins, however, did beat them in that game, and Dolphins were honestly not as good of a team as we thought they were going to be for that one, but they were a much better shot. In a very close game, the Jets didn't win, unfortunately, and the bad news for that is that puts the Jets at their 3rd straight loss. Now, when a team is, yes, according to the stats here, we have no team has ever won the division when starting 0-3. 0-3. There have been no teams that have ever done that in the NBL. There have been teams that have started 1-2 and have won the division, and there have also been teams that have made the playoffs being 0-3 to start off. In fact, the Athens did that 2 years ago when they actually but they made the playoffs. They won the division in that year, but they were 1-2 to start off the season, so that wasn't really count. Well, we had the biggest game of the week that we thought was good. The Otters ended up being a blowout against the Falcons. The Falcons have gone to their third straight loss, and once again, never in the history a team has ever won a division with the Falcons. However, that division is not a big deal because the Panthers have won that division for the last, I believe it's 10 years. Is that right? Last 10 years? 12 years? 12 years, okay. So it was last 12 years they have won that division. They have not won every playoff game in that point, but they have done it. The Tigers win the third straight game against the Ravens. However, they are slightly behind the Browns because the points are slightly below. They have 5-point difference, which is honestly still pretty good. Tigers and Browns will face at some point. Will face at least twice in the division, maybe only once because of how the divisional games work. But it was a pretty close game between the Tigers and Ravens. Ravens are still 0-1, but they have not done terribly. So they're not getting a great amount of score, which is a big problem. Their defense has been laying them down in that case. We have the Giants, who have gone a huge streak by winning against the Knights. That was a pretty back and forth close game. In week 3, the Giants won at the very last second. In fact, it was 88 to 87 in favor of the Knights when the final shot was it, and they had to review it and make sure that it was in fact valid, and it was. And the Giants did win that game by 1. So it was a very, very close game. Chargers tried to take a win against the Westfield, but they lost that game. Why you have it here that says Chargers won? Chargers did not win that game. I have it here. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Chargers did win that. Chargers did lose that game. It was a very close game. Westville was, however, able to come back and actually came back 12 points at the very end of the game. The Chargers didn't score a single point at that point. They were at 85 points when Westville was currently only at, what was it? It was at 78 points. They came back 12 points in order to win that game. And finally, the big thing was that Lightning were able to come back versus the Saints to win that game. The Saints, looking at this season, did take a win there. The first loss to the Saints all year, but they played the Lightning, and Lightning are pretty decent for this year. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Saints this week. The biggest thing for last week is that's my team. Don't need to look at that. Is that my predictions did actually do decently. I'm currently 31-17 for anyone that knows what that means. The overall, which means the teams that had a higher overall have gone 30-18. I'm hoping that this week I'll do a lot better in that case because overalls have been a little bit tough on teams. A big thing before we get into the predictions, the final day for predictions was technically tomorrow, but the Hawks have decided to sign 2 players to their team. They've signed 2 Panthers players to their team. The Hawks added Tom Ander and Tessa Ander to the team late this afternoon, and they will be starters in that game, which does in fact technically change their rating. to an average of 81, so actually does lower their rating. Oops, that's the overall. Sorry, it's an 85. So it actually does improve their rating a little bit. Unfortunately, they will not be whenever we do this. Your overall doesn't get updated just because you decide to sign players, because week 3 is the last time. The end of week 3 is the last point. So technically, tomorrow is the last day for that, which will be Friday. Right. So if any Hawks decide to do anything at Tom Maynard and Tessa Andy were both signed to the team early that day, and they're making $5,000 a year in the previous $3,000 they were making when they were on the Panthers. All right, let's get on to this week's for week 4. And this will be an interesting week for week 4. Right. For predictions, and they did not give me the thing. And so this week is going to be interesting because most of the teams that are away have the advantage at home. Basically, they have a bigger chance of winning the game. For example, we've got the Texans-Tigers game on minus. Texans-Tigers game. All but the game, all except for the Dolphins and Chargers game, the Angels and Bulldogs game, which is obviously really close, Tigers and Hawks, and the Lions and the Giants game. Do the home teams actually have the advantage at being at home? Okay, a nice Westfield game too, but basically every other team who is away has got the advantage. I mean, if you look at all of these games here, down to like the Pirates game, those teams have a better overall rating than teams that are away, and the majority of them do. Yes, there's very few of them that aren't. So the predictions for this week will be very difficult to do because of the fact that it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Start off with Tigers and Tex game. It's a 5-point advantage in favor of the Tex, in favor of the Tigers. That game happens at 12 o'clock on Saturday. To be honest, this is a really interesting game. And for this team, if you look at the divisional outcome for those two, Tex haven't won a game yet. They've got one tie, and that's the only thing. And actually, there was a tie this last week. It was the Tex and the Werewolves that tied this week. Be honest, there yet. The thing is about how many points that the Tex have allowed. They've allowed 266 points versus only scoring 243. Well, they've scored 81 points per game versus. We're in week 4 now, so I want to change that. The Tigers, who have gotten a much better hits, have gotten an average of about 105 points. They've scored 300 hits, and they've also hits. Now, their overall points spout isn't so great. So to be honest, this is going to be a very tough game, and honestly, I'm surprised that this game wasn't picked as the game of the week. We'll get to what the game of the week is in this week. And to be honest, I am going to pick the Tigers to win this game. However, I don't think it's going to be really close. And the Tigers, because the Tigers have a slight advantage in this game, I'm going to go with a 3-point difference in this one. I think 3 points in favor of the Tigers. Although I think this game could go either way. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Tex do win this game. However, in my prediction, I do think the Tigers of their chance. Okay, Browns Ravens is a divisional game. Browns and Ravens have a interesting. It's a very close thing overall. I mean, both teams have a very close overall rating for that thing. The difference is Ravens haven't won a game yet, and they've only scored an average 78 points, versus the Browns, who have not lost a game yet, and are scoring 300 and not allowing less points than the Ravens are. So the fact is, this game is going to be they're also scoring 100, 6 points per game. This game, I don't think it's going to be close whatsoever to that effect. We don't need this anymore. And my prediction is the Browns will win that game, and it will be a rather big difference. 12 points is what I predict for this game. I'm going to be in favor of the Browns. I think the Browns will do a whole lot better in that game. All right, 8th and Panthers. To be honest, this is going to be an absolute blowout. If you see the difference in what the difference of overall ratings. I mean, looking at the Panthers, Panthers have a much better and are better in every position versus the Ethan, and the Ethan is not going to have a chance. I mean, obviously their defense is the best thing they can get a chance at. And if you look at the overall for the Panthers, they're scoring on average of 141 per game. Scored 123 last week, versus the Ethan, who are 2-1, so they are in it, scoring only 81 points per. And they're basically it. So basically, at this point, they've had a very relaxed schedule, if that makes any sense. Relaxed schedule. Although they do have, it's going to get a lot tougher. They lost against the Lions, which is perfect. They play the Panthers, and that's his prediction. They're supposed to be about half and half over the season, and that is not going to get them to the playoffs. And unfortunately, I think they're going to be fourth in the division for that week. Period. But I'm going to go ahead and give the Athens a good advantage that they will do well. So I'm only going to give them a 10-point difference. I'm going to favor and say the Panthers will win that game, but I do think it's going to be a much closer game than it is predicted. All right, Cardinals and Colts starting at Saturday at 3:20. This honestly is a good game, and I will say this: it's not the game of the week, but it is a very good game for this fans. Cardinals at this point, back up, have a pretty good chance of doing very well. Cardinals have a 2-1. They're only scoring 81 points per game and allowing only about 200 points per game total overall. And the problem is that's where I'm thinking the Colts. The Colts do not have nearly as much. They haven't won a game yet. And they're scoring exactly 81 points. But they've allowed more points, and that's the only difference in this game. This is an interesting week, an interesting game. I honestly think this is going to be a very close game. It is 10 points in favor of the Colts. However, I'm going to give the Cardinals the benefit of the doubt here, and I think the Cardinals will win this week. However, I think it's going to be a very close game. I'm going to go with a 1-point score in difference. All right, Bobcats and Werewolves. Not the game of the week still. Yeah, we haven't got the game of the week yet. Bobcats and Werewolves. We got a tough one here. Werewolves have a big advantage towards the Bobcats. And if you look at Bobcats haven't won a game yet. They're only getting about 8 points per game versus the Werewolves, who are getting only 10 points more on average and allowing more points. So the problem with this game is that the Werewolves do leave the division currently. That's because no other team has won a game yet. And to be honest, being 1-1-1 doesn't really give you much to go off of. I'm going to give the Werewolves the win here, but I think it's going to be Honestly, still a very close game. I'm going to go and give a 2-point advantage to the Werewolves. However, I think this game is going to be very close and very big in the end. I think the Werewolves will win this game, but it will be very close in the end. All right, Dogs and Supermen. This is the predicted game of the week. Dogs and Superman. And the reason why? Well, I don't know why they picked the Dogs and Superman to be win week. Superman haven't lost a game yet. They're 3-0, and the Dogs are 1-2, which is actually not even that's not right. However, they have done really well, and also the problem is they've scored 70 points on average, basically 68, 69 points, and by what? The reason why I think this game has gone to be the game of the week is because the Supermen haven't scored a whole lot of points and are not exactly a very high defense. This will be an interesting game for this week, and it is the predicted game. It is the game of the week. I'm going to go with the favor of the Superman. I'm going to think they're going to stay up. I'm going to go with a 7-point prediction in favor of that. We're going to change this back to text. This is the game of the week, but it is one of those games I'm kind of like, why is it called the game of the week? I guess no other games are very useful. We got the UNC and the Saints, and honestly, I would think this is more likely to be the game of the week. The problem is we got UNC. That's really all I can say, but they haven't won a game yet. And I think there is a rule about saying that you can't actually put a team, which is a team that is not won a game yet, on to the game of the week. 98 points in. UNC's actually done pretty well. The only thing is they've allowed a lot more points than they have scored, and that's really the only advantage to that other teams will have against them. Saints, however, have a much bigger chance. They've only scored about 90 points per game, and they only allow a big portion of 262 points. The big question is who will win this game, and I have to say the Saints will win that game. However, I think it's going to be a blowout. I'm going with a 12-point advantage in favor of the Saints. Lightning and UNC, honestly, I have been not very impressed with the Lightning. Sure, they won last week. Sure, they won last week. They played against the Saints. But the Lightning did not do very well, and the Saints and Lightning both did not score very well in the game. In that game, and to be honest, I was kind of disappointed. I predicted the Lightning to win that game because of the fact that I thought the Saints were going to have a little bit of trouble. I was completely lucky about that game, to be honest. I gave the Lightning the win. I don't think the Lightning have what it takes, though, to keep it up. The problem is they're playing against the Indians, and the Indians are not great. But I'm going to give the Indians the win in this case. I think it is going to be a 1-point advantage, just like I said, just as like this is for the prediction, for the Indians to win this game because of the Indians' defense. The Indians have done fairly well in their defensive standings. They haven't won a game yet, but they've allowed a lot more points, but I think they're going to do a little much better in this game. And to be honest, the Indians have not allowed more than 70 points in the first 3 quarters. And they, on average, scored 93. So I honestly think if the Indians can handle it for the rest of the game, the Indians will have a chance to win this game. I think the Lightning will have a hard time because of the fact they just don't seem to have what it takes. Sure, they're 2-1. They're scoring 111 points per game, but they're allowing 310 points as well. I think the Lightning do have a little bit of a fun, and actually the Lightning would be in a much higher position in their division. I gotta change that. But I do think the Lightning will struggle in this game, and I think it's going to be the reason why I think the Lightning will lose this game. However, I do think this will be a close game either way. That's why I'm going to go for 1 point. Otters and Pirates. Pirates, 1 and 2 right now, not in exactly the best states. They're allowing way more points than they are scoring. They're scoring about 80 points per game. The problem with this game is that the Otters are scoring not much better, to be honest. They're doing slightly better, but not a whole lot better. The Pirates in most of the points of their game. However, the Otters are scoring a lot better on average per game. Maybe if you look at the Otters weekly things, for the first week, the Otters did win that game 105. Then they lost the game, getting only 72, and then they won this game, scoring 112. So I mean, honestly, it really varies on the week, and I think the Otters will do better in this week. But if I look at the stats for all those things, it looks to me like the Pirates will win this game. I'm going to pick the Otters to win this week. But I think it's a favor of only one. I think the Pirates will win this game in the context of who will probably win. But I think the Pirates will be struggling with all that. Mostly because if you look at the Otters stats for defensive and offensive and all that. I'm missing the Otters. Pirates have an average team, 91, 90, have an average team, so they're getting all based in normal stats. But for the Otters, their stats are honestly about the same. The difference, I think, in this game will be the Pirates will have a little bit better. And they will get back those things. Actually, I'm going to change my rating. I think the Pirates, they're getting back their star player. I'm changing that back. I'm going to go with the Pirates. I'm going to go with a 2-point advantage. I don't normally change my thing, but the thing is, I realized that they are going to get back Samuel Woodjullis back this week, so I think that would be a better chance. Honestly, I think this is probably a little bit off the prediction, but we'll see. Dolphins and Chargers, another game that I could see the game of the week. Chargers are 1 and 2 right now. Dolphins are 2 and 1. So I mean, it's gonna be prediction interesting. It'll be interesting. I'm going to pick the Dolphins in this game because of the fact that I don't see the Chargers being able to come up with enough points. I'm going with 4 points to win this game. They have 10-point advantage is what is predicting the Dolphins. I don't think the Chargers have what it takes to win the game off of that. Knights and Westville, another game that could have easily been the game of the week. Westville's 1 and 2. They're scoring about as much points as they're allowing, so not exactly the benefit here for that. Versus the Knights, who are 2 and 1, and are allowing the same things. The difference is what the Westville actually scores per game. They're scoring 75 versus the Knights are scoring about 79, which is slightly better. The difference I see here is just about what the scores were for the previous weeks. Westville got 74. Westville got 60. Westville got 90. It's unpredictable exactly what they're going to score this game. I have to go with the Knights winning this game, and I believe that it will be an interesting game. I don't think, but I think UNC. I'm sorry, not UNC. Westville is going to have a hard time. I'm going to go with a 9-point difference in favor of the Knights. Yes. All right, another game at 4 o'clock on Sunday. Jets and Beagles. Another game that could easily been the game of the week. Why they picked the Dogs and Superman's game, I don't know. The Jets. Oh, I know why. Because the Jets haven't won a game yet. So, yeah, that would be the reason why. The Jets haven't won a game yet. And they're scoring decently. I will say they are scoring decently. And the Beagles game, Beagles are 2-1. I'm going to go with Beagles winning this game because of the fact, even though the Jets are scoring slightly better, I'm going to go with the Beagles winning this game. 2 points in favor of the Beagles. But I think this is going to be an interesting game, and I think it's going to be a very close game overall because of the fact that Beagles have done well, even though they are scoring less points overall. Angels and Bulldogs, another game that could have easily been the game of the week. Angels are 1-2 right now. They're scoring about 300 points per game, and they're allowing about 200 points per game, which is a pretty big difference. Versus the Bulldogs, who are doing pretty well too. They're allowing more points, the only difference, and that's the only. Both of them are getting about 9 points per game, and that's pretty big for that. I have to say this is going to be a close game, and the fact that it's happening really late at 6:20 really makes my life like I don't even know who's to predict here. I'm gonna go in favor of week 1. What was the score for week 1 for each of those games? Angels. Angels actually lost their first week, their first game. They got 116 versus the other team here, the Bulldogs, who actually scored 100. So honestly, they both did pretty well. I'm going to go, in this case, in favor of the Bulldogs winning. 1 point in favor of that. I know the Angels are predicted to win, but I don't think it's much of a difference. All right, Dragons and Hawks. I don't even have to really much to say about this. The Hawks have been disappointing. I'm going for the Dragons to win this game. And the only thing I think the Hawks have for them is that they will have 2 additional players that are really high rated and will have a better chance of winning that game. But when it comes to the Dragons had scored pretty well over the last weeks. The only way they had a hard time was week 2 when they played, when they actually killed the Chargers by 60 points. But you see, week 1, I don't know where week 1. Week 1, they lost game 54. They scored 60 the second week. But then they were able to keep in touch with the Panthers. This week, I think the Dragons will show back up, and I don't think the Hawks will have what it takes, even with all their high ratings. Packers and Falcons game, honestly, probably a weird game, to be honest. The Falcons are probably the toughest division and haven't won a game yet, so. But they've only scored 200. They've only scored 69 points per game and allowed almost 300. So they're playing the Packers, who have gone 2-1 instead, and they're probably the second toughest division. Difference they're only experienced. I have to say this is going to be a tough game. I'm going to go in favor of the Packers. Because of the fact that I think the Packers will have a tougher game. This will be a very close game, another game that could easily be the game of the week. And honestly, I'm surprised it wasn't. Oh, because the Falcons were 0-3. That's the only reason why. And honestly, I think this is going to be a tough game either way. I'm going to go with a 5-point favor of the Packers, but yes. Finally, another game that should be the game of the week, but why are we going to go ahead and say the Lions? Because the Lions are 3-0, and guess what? So are the Giants. The Giants are both 3-0. This is a huge game. Why this was not picked to be the game of the week, I don't know. There is no rule that says you can't have two teams that have undefeated records. Be it 97 versus Lions, who are 96. I mean, it's going to be a very close game, and honestly, I would not be surprised if this game ended in a tie. And I want both these teams to win because I really want them to be an undefeated team, more than one undefeated team at this point. Next to at least 4 undefeated teams. I'm gonna go for the Lions. 1 point pick, 1 point. I think it's very close back and forth. And that is what I have to pick for this because of the fact that I think this is going to be a very close game. And to be honest, I don't know why this game was not picked to be the game of the week because this is probably the best game. I can't wait to see what happens for next week when it comes down. The big thing is I think this is going to be an interesting week, and honestly, I think it's going to be one of those really close weeks. Going back to Sports Hour here, you guys still have you still can put it in at any point, predicting at any point during this time period. And if you get at least 31, if you get so many wins, you can be first place. Currently, the overall is the lowest, and you will get your prediction. And if you pick your team, you can pick your team at any time up to, I believe it is week 16. You did get a point penalty for every thing you get to do, right? So if you get up to halfway through the season, there's no penalty. And I think I might have it is. If it goes after that, it's 1 point for every game. There was 1 point penalty. So it could, and if it is after week 16, then it will be 2 point penalty for each game. And you don't want to have that. You can pick your team at any time up to the end of the year. Thank you guys for watching Sports Hour. I will see you guys in the next week's episode, which will be on Thursday again. And I will see you guys in Sports Hour. And don't forget, guys, to watch this next episode. And the rest of the Sports Hour episodes will be up there in case you want to go back to any of those episodes. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time on Sports Hour.